going to start with Leire. Leire, please, if you can start.
Yes, sure. Let me just share my screen.
So while you start.
Okay, do you see that?
Yes, so I will just present you with your presentation. Thank you so much to The Death and Beyond, a comparative analysis of Harry Potter's Death and John Donne's Sonnet X, an amazing topic. Leire García Alonso studied English studies in the University of Basque Country, graduating in June 2021. Her final dissertation dealt with how the character Ronald Weasley goes through the hero's journey in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. In July 2022, she graduated from the master's degree on comparative literature and literary studies from the University of Basque Country, analyzing the Harry Potter series from a literary genre perspective for her master's final thesis. In September 2022, she participated in the 6th International Conference on Myth in the Arts, in which she gave an introduction to her doctoral thesis, which is currently developing in the University of Basque Country. In November 2023, she participated once again in the 7th International Conference on Myth in the Arts, in which she spoke about the representation and role of 30 mythological creatures in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. In November 2024, as a speaker in the 8th International Conference on the Myth in the Arts, she analyzed the connections between George Lucas' Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and Aristotle's Poetics, focusing on the fall into disgrace of Anakin Skywalker. So, again, thank you so much for your investigation, Leire. If you can start whenever you want, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So, as you said, my presentation today is called To Death and Beyond, a comparative analysis of Harry Potter's Death and John Donne's Sonnet 10. And, well, the death has been a recurrent motif in literature, dating back as far as literature itself does. And it's been a theme that has been approached through very different mediums, from epic poems to non-fictional narratives. I'm sorry, I have to apologize because I have a cold, so I might have to cough a little bit throughout the presentation. I'm sorry. But even if it has been approached through different mediums, consistent subtopics have emerged across these different works and literary styles, and this is evident in the two works that I'm going to analyze today, John Donne's Holy Sonnet 10 and the spoiler alert, Harry Potter's Death in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. So my focus today will be how each author represents the concepts of death and eternal life in these two works. And I will, because they are both very linked, I'm sorry. They are both very linked to the Christian tradition. I'm sorry, yeah? So John Donne was born in London in 1572, and he is known as the founder of the metaphysical poets. He was born to a Roman Catholic family, but when he was 22, he swore allegiance to the Anglican Church after his brother was killed. He also worked as Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in 1621, and he stayed there until 1631, where he died. Rowling, she was born in 1965 in Jade, in England as well, and her relationship with religion began very early on, just like John Donne's, because her parents enrolled her as a child at the Church of England school in Tud's Hill, and she also joined, when she was 10, the Second Tyrenham Brownie Pack, which was a church group where she and her friends completed activities once a week, a bit similar to the Girl Scouts. She has always identified herself as a Christian and a member of the Church of Scotland, and she has admitted that she has had trouble keeping her faith, but that she has used the Harry Potter series to work through those issues of her by using the narrative to help herself. Before we start with the analysis, I want to define two key concepts that will be necessary, and the first one is death. So, the Cambridge Dictionary of English defines death in a very short way, just the end of life, which is as how many of us know death to be. But the Christian tradition provides a more expansive theological framework, and it distinguishes between three types of death. The first quote that you see in the presentation, which is Genesis 3:19, represents the physical death, which is the demise of the mortal body. Then we have the spiritual death, which unfortunately I was not able to find a quote in the Bible that actually refers to it, but it is defined as the moment in which a person separates themselves from God and falls into sin. The second quote that you find in the presentation, which is Revelation 20:14 and 15, refers to the final death, which is the eternal death, and this is reserved only for those who do not restore their faith in God and are condemned to, as you see in the quote, to a lake of fire. In fact, in Romans 5:12, which is the last quote that you see in the PPT, it is mentioned that the origin of death itself comes from the original sin, Adam and Eve's betrayal of God's trust, and is a consequence that all humans have to suffer because of it. The second concept that I want to define is limbo. And in contrast to death, limbo is a slightly more elusive concept, and it's less definitely canonized, especially in religion. So the Cambridge Dictionary provides two different definitions for this word, the first one being an uncertain situation that you cannot control, and in which there is no progress and improvement, which is the first quote that you see on the PPT. And the second definition is the place between heaven and hell, to which Roman Catholics believe that the spirits of dead children who have not been baptized go, which is the second quote on the presentation. As you can see, Cambridge highlights that the limbo is a concept that derives from the Roman Catholic tradition, and this suggests that it is not universally accepted across all Christian denominations. This lack of acceptance stems from the absence of specific biblical quotes that refer to a place that resembles this limbo that we have mentioned. The closest reference may be Sheol, which is an ancient Hebrew belief system's realm of the dead, where all souls awaited judgment, and this is referenced in Psalm 16:10, which is the last quote that you see in the presentation. But again, there are no actual quotes with the word limbo in it, so it's very difficult to see where the Roman Catholics got this concept from. This would be the poem itself, Holy Sonnet, which I wanted you guys to see before I start with the analysis of it. As you can see, I have numbered some of the lines, and these are the lines that I will be talking about during my analysis, which would be lines 7, 9, 10, 13, and 14. But as you can see, it's a sonnet, so it has 14 lines in total. So in his Holy Sonnet 10, Donne addresses death itself, and he characterizes it as a force that claims everyone, regardless of their earthly power or strength, and thus implying that at the end of existence, all humans are equal and will be judged in the same manner. This can be seen in lines 7, 9, and 10, which are quotes 1, 2, and 3 on this slide. And Donne, therefore, strips death of its perceived omnipotence, and he portrays it instead as a mere pawn of greater forces, which in this case would be, of course, God. In the case of Rowling, in chapter 33, The Prince's Tale, Harry discovers through Professor Snape's memories that a fragment of Voldemort's soul lives inside of him, that the only way that his enemy can be destroyed is for Harry to die at Voldemort's hand, and that his mentor, Albus Dumbledore, had known this for a long time before he died and never told Harry about it. In the next chapter, in chapter 34, The Forest Again, Rowling portrays the main character, Harry, trying to process all of this information and his mentor's betrayal while in the middle of a war for the freedom of the magical world. We can see Harry coming to terms with the fact that he must die, that there is no other way around it, in the quotes number 4, 5, and 6 in the slide. Because of the time frame, I'm not going to read them because they are quite long. We also see the absolute acceptance of his death at the end of the chapter when he faces Voldemort in the depths of the Forbidden Forest, and he makes no attempt to defend himself from the villain's attack. And so he accepts his fate and dies somewhat peacefully. Both authors demonstrate, through Donne's direct address of death and Rowling's character perspective, that a crucial element of human experience is the acceptance of one's mortality. For both, the path to peace involves surrendering to this fact rather than fighting against it, and actually Rowling employs the villain Voldemort as a foil for this theme. His relentless pursuit of immortality and fight against death ultimately leads to his destruction. And as Dumbledore later advises Harry, the true master of death does not seek to run away from it. He accepts that he must die, understands that there are far, far worse things in the living world than dying. So after the inevitability of death is admitted, both works transition to the theme of eternal life, which, as we have seen, is tightly linked to the Christianity's core values and beliefs. In lines 13 and 14, which are quotes number 1 and 2 in this next slide, Don characterizes the act of dying, which would be the physical death that we talked about before, as a short sleep, and he imbues the experience with a sense of peace that it otherwise might not have. He also mentions that after this short sleep, we wake up to never die again, referencing the eternal life that is achieved by remaining faithful to God throughout one's life, and implying that death is nothing but a necessary passage to achieve this eternal happiness that everyone desires. He finishes the sonnet by establishing that even death lacks a place in the eternal life, because souls are not affected by its finality, and so death itself dies once the physical death happens. In chapter 35, King's Cross, after being killed by Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest, Harry awakens in a place that resembles King's Cross's train station and meets his mentor, Albus Dumbledore, who suggests that this place is unique to Harry, as you can see in quote number 3, by "This is, as they say, your party." Rowling here implies that each individual's limbo is a personalized construct, which is an internal representation of what provides each person peace. In the case of Harry, King's Cross symbolizes the beginning of Harry's journey to belonging and friendship at Hogwarts. However, Rowling, in quote number 4, intentionally leaves the literal reality of this realm ambiguous, which prompts the reader's own interpretive engagement. And both characters discuss what Harry should do next, and the former Hogwarts director suggests that if Harry does not wish to go back to life, which he can do because his soul is still intact, he only lost the part of Voldemort that bit inside of him, he could board a train and let it take him on. Here, Rowling implies that there is a life after death, an eternal existence within the narrative's magical framework, and you can see that in quote number 5 on the PPT. So both authors state that one must go through a journey or portal to achieve eternal life. In those cases, the act of falling asleep, while for Rowling is the choice of taking the train. And while Rowling doesn't explicitly mention an eternal life waiting for Harry should he board the train, it can be understood that it exists by Dumbledore's comment of the train taking him on. Nevertheless, neither work introduces a specific impediment to achieving this eternal state, which contrasts with the biblical definitions that we discussed, where a lack of faith results in eternal death. So, in conclusion, the evident thematic convergence between Don's metaphysical defiance of death and Rowling's the contemporary fantasy narrative reveals the enduring power of Christianity and its tradition, and how it has influenced the Western literary tradition itself. Despite the 3.5 centuries that separate them, both authors utilize the common motive of the acceptance of physical death as a prerequisite for the achievement of eternal life. And furthermore, in both works, the function of death is not merely an endpoint, but a narrative catalyst for moral and spiritual virtue, like a redemption of sorts. And while both texts concur on the reality of life after death, we find that they differ in the manner of achieving it. Don's work, which is rooted in Anglican theology, explicitly links eternal life to restored faith in God, which makes it dependent on a spiritual state. And Rowling's narrative, however, presents a more liminal space of absolute choice. This absence of the biblical threat of eternal death in the King's Cross scene reflects a shift toward a humanistic, merit-based judgment, which was more common at the end of the 20th century. So that would be my presentation for today. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah.